Hey everybody, back today with another video, and today I've got three topics to talk about. First, the Nikon Z9, the third teaser trailer has dropped. Second, the Sony A7 IV. It's going to be released today, but Tony Northrup has already spilled the beans. And three, the new MacBook Pros. We're going to talk about all the different features of the new MacBook Pros and when we can expect to get our hands on ours. All that up after the intro. Hey everybody, I'm Ted, and if you're new here, please click the subscribe button and the bell icon to get notifications when new videos become available. I talk about computers, cameras, lenses, cars, all that sorts of stuff. If that interests you, click the subscribe button and get more of that. So first up, the Nikon Z9. The third teaser trailer has dropped, and let's take a quick look at what we see in it. Alright, so really the takeaway for this video is that Nikon thinks this is going to be the sports camera for the next few years. They showed many different scenes of the autofocus tracking different people and different objects like dirt bikes and race cars on the track. And they also showed that it is going to have an extremely high frame rate. I can't quite do the math on how many frames they rattled off there in a second, but it wouldn't surprise me if it's upwards of 20, maybe even total 30 frames per second. And it looks like it's going to have blackout-free EVF when shooting at those high frame rates. So we'll find out soon. The Nikon Z9 is expected to be released sometime next week. I've said it before, I'll say it again, this camera is not for me. I don't shoot sports professionally. I think it's going to be in the neighborhood of $7,000. It's going to be an A9 competitor, but if that is something that is in your wheelhouse, I think the Nikon is going to give the Z9 specifically is going to give the Sony A9 a run for its money. So on to Sony and the A7 IV, which everybody had expected to be coming this week. And poor Tony Northrup got a little bit of egg on his face by accidentally releasing his Sony A7 IV review video one day early before he pulled it. But it pretty much confirms what we knew. It's going to be capable of 4K 60. It's getting a fully articulated back screen. It also has the menus that are touch capable from the Sony A7 III. It's going to be 33 megapixels, and the price is shooting up to $2,600. The price doesn't seem to really, the increase doesn't seem to bother me that much. I had expected it to be more than the $2,000 of the Sony A7 III, which is still a very capable camera, and I fully expect that Sony will keep that camera around, maybe at a slightly reduced price point, maybe of like $1,800 in their lineup, at least for a while. I think that the A7 IV has a lot of offerings that are going to make it future-proof for the next few years, but the A7 III is still going to be a very capable camera for stills and for video. And I'm going to get my pre-order in as soon as they go live. Speaking of pre-orders, Apple released the new MacBook Pros 14 and 16-inch edition using the new Apple Silicon, which many had expected to be called the M1X. But instead, Apple marketing went with the M1 Pro and another variant that is called the M1 Max. The differences between the two variants mainly being the GPU cores. On the Pro, you get 16, and on the Max, you get either 24 or 32. Also on the M1 Max, you get doubling of the encoders that handle H.265, H.264, and new in the Pro and Max line, there are encoders that will help with ProRes and ProRes RAW. So these machines are obviously going to be huge in the content creation space. Just for full reference, I switched out all my content editing to a 2020 MacBook Air last November. I had been using a 2019 16-inch MacBook Pro i9 with a, I forget which GPU it had, but I paid like $4,600 for that machine. And this $1,400 MacBook Air trounced it in just about every metric. Surprisingly, I was able to use this MacBook Air for my day job, which is software development. And in that area, this thing with 16 gigs of RAM was faster and smoother in many cases than the 16-inch MacBook Pro with 64 gigs of RAM. So I sold the i9 16-inch MacBook Pro and have been using this 13-inch MacBook Air with 16 gigs of RAM ever since. And it's proven to be a great machine for what I do. There's two areas where I'm looking forward to the MacBook Pro, which I think will be an improvement over this in one area, and that is the additional RAM. The 16-inch limit on RAM on this hit me in two areas. The first is using Docker. Docker virtualizes a container that has a stack of software. You know, it could have PHP, it could have Node.js, it could have any different sorts of software stacks, and that uses a lot of RAM. This machine, while it runs Docker fine, it does render pages in the VMs a bit slowly compared to the i9 16-inch MacBook Pro. Not so slow that I wouldn't want to use it, but obviously slower than a machine that had 64 gigs of RAM. And the other area where this machine is a slight disappointment over the prior machines was in using big projects in Logic Pro. This could open them and run them fine, but opening a 90-track project on this machine could take upwards of 2 to 3 minutes, whereas on my 2018 Mac Mini with 64 gigs of RAM, that same project would open like in 20-25 seconds. So those are the two areas that I'm really hoping the new MacBook Pros improve upon. As I said, about the 14-inch variant, I'm going for a little bit of portability, even though these machines are a bit chunkier and heavier than their predecessors. But I suspect that when the benchmarks come in, that they will wow everybody once again, as the M1 MacBook Air and Pro did last November when they were released. I'll have to wait a bit. The custom orders that I put in won't ship until early November, but I suspect we'll see some benchmarks start trickling out over the next couple days, and general release will happen starting next Monday for people who did not get custom configs. That will take a while. So that's it for me. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please click the thumbs up button, and I'll see you in the next one.